What I was thinking. Yeah. So I think
We are recording, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is a historic event. Been around a long time. This is the first Saturday meeting I ever remember. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to certify the notice.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Here.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Here.
Thank you. We're here to listen to the council's deliberation on DSR FY 2025-0008. I want to go through a few preliminaries. The public hearing on this is closed. It was closed out on the 30th. So now it's in the council's hands. I'm going to once again thank you in advance for your decorum during the deliberation. Someone might hear something discussed that you don't agree with, perhaps, maybe not. But any shout outs from the audience? Number one, the council can't consider anything that came in after the public hearing was closed. So the decision will be made on the record. The proceedings from the 30th have been transcribed verbatim. The council all has a copy of that transcript. It was posted online, so anyone interested had an opportunity to read the transcript. So by statute, that's the criteria they have to utilize to deliberate. So my request is let's let them do that. I'll remind you again, the acoustics in this room aren't the greatest. If you want to have a sidebar discussion with your neighbor, it's okay if you get up and go out in the hallway to have your sidebar, but please don't do that during the hearing because that noise carries up here and it can be disruptive. With that, I'm going to go through some disclosures. Are there any disclosures that need to be altered from our December 30th meeting? That is conflict of interest.
No. No.
No.
Okay. I think Jenna's printing some extra copies of some things. So, okay. So we're ready now, council, to initiate the deliberation on DSR FY 2025-0008. I'd like to start with the findings of fact. For the audience, the findings of fact are who the applicant is, the property's legal description, those kinds of things. I think most everybody here is probably coming and very interested in the conclusions of law, which we will deal with the 8 criteria that the council has to decide on in that regard. But council, I'd like to start with the findings of fact, and those are the first 8 pages of the decision document. So that's the property size, the legal description of the property, the various standards that apply to evaluate this application, the documents that were required to be submitted, comments from the Highway District, the City Engineer, the ITD, Republic Services, DEQ, North Ada Fire, and the Garden City Attorney. There's a list of contacts, written contacts that we received prior to the hearing. There's the report from the Design Review Committee. There haven't been any changes to the findings with the exception of page 7, number 9. And this edition deals with the public hearing on the 30th that needed to be added to the basic findings.
So sorry, the question on the public hearings, can you let us know what's the outcome of the public hearing?
That's what the question was. Thank you for that question. The question was, we had the public hearing. Can you tell us what the outcome of the public hearing is? That's what this meeting is about. So the public hearing, everyone that wanted to speak, the applicant made a presentation, the staff made a presentation. We took several hours of testimony, let everybody have their say, produce any evidence they had, so forth. We closed the public hearing and it was 5 minutes to midnight.
Wow.
So, yeah. We didn't want to carry it into next year, at least at the time. So, so now we're in the deliberation. And what I mean by that is we've had the public hearing. So what does that mean? And the council is going to discuss among themselves in an open forum like this, so the public can listen to their discussion and decide what the outcome is. Okay. That's a great question. I probably should have briefed everybody on that. So council, in your review of the findings of fact, was there anything, in fact, Council President, would you just query the council on their, if they have any concerns with the record insofar as just the findings of fact?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here, council will direct your attention to page 7, finding number 9. In the packet before us, it's highlighted in yellow. These are additive of the findings we reviewed at our last meeting. And I would move to adopt findings contained in number 9 as part of our findings of fact, and would ask for a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the findings of fact as detailed in the packet. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As to the remaining findings, we went over this with considerable effort at the last meeting, council. Is there anything any council member would like to call out? And if so, please do it by number on these findings, as you know, something that you don't believe is accurately reflected before we get into our deliberations.
Council President.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I reserve the right to stipulate that there may be some statements that should be reconsidered. How about that?
Thank you. Councilmember Rasmussen.
Council President, I don't have or did not come across any issues at all with the findings of fact. So I'm satisfied with how they are written in the decision document, draft decision document.
Thank you. I am like Council Member Rasmussen insofar as I'm satisfied that the findings of fact represent our efforts to this and accurately represent the application before us. I do believe our conclusions of law, we will have considerable deliberation and perhaps express differing opinions. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn that time back to you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move to the conclusions of law, and there are 8 findings that the council needs to consider. We're talking about using the word findings a lot. The findings of fact, these are kind of technical pieces of the approval process, okay? So there's no dispute on the property description or the amount of acreage that's used or who came or who submitted written testimony. So we've got that piece out of the way. Now we're going to talk about the items that we had either written comments or oral comments. And this includes the applicant's presentation. It also includes the representations from those of you that testified. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a quick point of order?
sure.
Sorry to interrupt the deliberations. I just wanted to make a record. There were 2 emails that came into the city after the record was closed. One was from a Mark Wasdal, and I think there was a second one that came in previous in time. The council's not going to be considering those emails. I just wanted to make a record of that. Those are going to be retained pursuant to our public records retention policy, and they are public records, and the city will keep them as such, but they are not going to be considered for these deliberations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wadhams. Okay, we'll start with finding 1. And I think you had a protocol you wanted to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And
Council
I'd like
President?
to announce this protocol a little bit to the room and explain what you can expect. There's a lot to cover here. There are 8 required findings. For those of you who aren't familiar or haven't reviewed these packets closely in the past, our good staff takes care in each of these findings for any application, not just this one, every application to present draft findings. The language in the draft is very technical and oftentimes beyond the scope of a simple elected official like myself. We all have opinions, I have opinions, but the technical language, we rely on these drafts to extract that technical language. The way that this will be structured is that I will review aloud to everyone here, just reciting verbatim the staff draft language of finding number 1. After I've done that, I will either adopt that as a finding that is in accordance with my study of this, or I will disagree with it and offer amended language. After I have done that, I'll turn to my left to Councilmember Rasmussen and ask for his conclusion on finding number 1. He can adopt without change, or he can amend to add his own language. And then after he is done, he'll turn the time to Councilmember Jorgensen to his left, who will do the same. After all 3 of us have commented on finding number 1, it'll come back to me and I'll ask for a vote on finding 1. That's not a vote on the entire project. We have to do this 8 times. It's a vote on number 1. And I've got a record here, and I'll mark whether the findings are met or whether the findings are not met. After we go through all 8 of, excuse me, so then if for finding 2, so I'm not doing all the talking and all the reading, Councilmember Rasmussen will read verbatim that staff draft finding, and we'll do the same process. It's going to take a minute, but it's important, and we're making a careful record of this. Please bear with us, be respectful. Listen, it's easy to tune this out. It can be technical. Like I mentioned, it can be very technical, but any discussion that we have will be in plain language that's easy to understand. Finally, once I have a record of all 8 findings, I'll pass it to the mayor and to the clerk for certification. And then I think we'll make an overall vote is probably what you had in mind, Mayor.
Yes, and that'll be colored by the discussion we're going to have on the first 8 items.
Undoubtedly.
Yes.
Okay, let us get started. Here we are on, for those that are following along or have a packet in front of you, I'm on page 10 of today's packet. Finding number 1 is this. The standard is that the proposed design shall comply with all design standards in Garden City Code Title 8. The draft language from the staff, as conditioned, the application meets this finding because it conforms to the reviewed section of code noted in this decision. Finding of fact number 12. Based on weighing the totality of evidence in the record and specifically the analysis provided in the staff report dated December 8, 2025, pages 12 through 29, the proposed design complies with all applicable design standards in Garden City Code Title 8. Subject to conditions of approval, the key evidence is summarized below. The project is located in the R3 medium density residential district, where multifamily dwellings are permitted. Density calculations comply when considering per parcel under the associated land minor land division application, and that's file number MLD FY 2024-0001. Now that process is underway. Required setbacks and building height standards are met, including building 1 being set back approximately 32 feet from Marigold Street, exceeding the minimum front setback requirement. The design incorporates articulation through wall offsets, balconies, and material changes, and primary entries have been revised to include enlarged canopies and accent materials, improving visibility and hierarchy as recommended by the design review consultants. Amenities required for developments with more than 75 units are provided, including a clubhouse, fitness facilities, open space, and walking trails. The tiling of the District 2 drainage ditch is an appropriate and permissible approach based on the extenuating circumstances demonstrated. The sewer line is located directly beneath the ditch, creating unavoidable maintenance conflicts for both the sewer system and the drainage facility. Due to the site's existing slopes, relocation of the sewer line is not feasible under the Department of Environmental Quality slope design standards. Garden City Code Section 8-4A-9 sub B2 authorizes the tiling of waterways when extenuating circumstances are present. Additionally, Garden City Code Section 8-1A-5C requires that in the event of conflicting code provisions, the more restrictive standard must be applied. In this case, ensuring the ability to adequately maintain both the sewer line and the drainage ditch is essential to public health. Accordingly, it is found that permitting the tiling of the ditch is the most appropriate and legally supportable solution under circumstances. Landscaping exceeds minimum requirements, with 14% of the site landscaped, including setbacks, surpassing the 5% minimum. Tree and shrub counts meet or exceed code standards, and perimeter landscaping is provided under residential along residential boundaries. Conditions of approval require Class 2 or Class 3 street trees along Marigold to ensure compliance with best practices. parking meets cumulative requirements with 392 spaces provided versus 389 required. If you're doing the math, that's 3 additional spaces. And bicycle parking complies with code with 264 spaces provided. Furthermore, a parking demand study prepared by Kittleson and Associates indicates that based on the ITE parking generation model 5th edition, the projected peak parking demand for the development is approximately 289 spaces using a dwelling unit based analysis, or 270 spaces using a per bedroom analysis. The proposed provision of 392 parking spaces is sufficient to meet the anticipated parking demand for the development. At the top of page 12, internal circulation and pedestrian connectivity has been improved per consultant recommendations with crosswalks and defined pathways added. Proposed fencing meets height and material standards. Outdoor lighting complies with section 8-4A4, and trash enclosures are screened per section 8-4A5. Stormwater systems utilize permeable pavers and landscape drainage features consistent with code. All drainage will be required to be approved by the city engineer for compliance with acceptable regulations. Sewer and water service compliance is conditioned upon resolution of capacity issues and installation per city engineer requirements. Private and common open spaces requirements are met for all units, with parcel 4 dedicated entirely to open space. The applicant is conditioned to achieve certification through a recognized green building program or equivalent measures prior to occupancy. That's like the energy standards. That's the end of finding number 1. Speaking for myself, I find that this
Respectfully, President of the Council, I apologize for interrupting, but before we begin discussing the merits and our findings, would it make sense to allow the council members to provide some general approach to how we view this application, our experience, and acknowledge those that contributed their time and were willing to come in on a Saturday?
Indeed. So I would like to acknowledge not only the time and effort that the applications put into these materials, the thoughtfulness, the design review consultants' efforts. Garden City staff has gone above and beyond. I appreciate each of you in the room that has been willing to come to these meetings, submit written comments that are very thoughtful, and in some cases, highly logical. I really appreciate those comments. It is unusual to meet on a Saturday, and unfortunately, we're doing that because of scheduling conflicts that I had, and that's personal to me, and I and my family thank you for that. Ken?
I would echo all those comments. I do definitely appreciate everybody's engagement that's here today with this application. A lot of people contributed comments and testimony. And one of the great things about having the opportunity to be up here is seeing an engaged community. So just a quick echo of what Council President Page says, but it's really kind of a neat thing to see as many people engaged in the community as we've seen. So that's all I would add to it. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I also would like to echo my appreciation for all those involved. I further would like to expand on some comments and my perspective and the background with which I bring to the analysis and opinions that I'll be sharing this evening. Of the council members voting and discussing this evening, I am the council member that recently went through an election cycle, and through that process had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time in the communities talking with each individual, with a lot of individual residents and getting a lot of feedback. I want to share for your benefit and for the benefit of my council members, some of the comments that I listened to, I heard them, and I want to ensure that the public understands that it is we take our role and responsibility as council members very, very seriously. The first comment that I want to share with fellow council members, and may likely be a sentiment and opinion that is held with members in this audience today, is that oftentimes it feels like public comment and participation is performative, that opinions and efforts are generated only to be summarily listened to, however, not truly factored in ultimate rendering of decisions. I want to assure the audience and the residents and community that that is in fact not the case. It's been my experience, and my fellow council members would also share this, I believe, that over the years, public testimony and input has in fact had an impact on the outcome, on the ultimate outcome. And in fact, here in this room, we've seen delightfully resolutions between developers and residents to the extent where a developer would be willing to move, for instance, entertainment type activities away from residential homes. So please understand that when we express our gratitude for your involvement, your comments, that it does have an impact. And in fact, I think many of you referenced one specific other development where the developer was engaged with the community and it changed the outcome and was a more desirable outcome for the neighborhoods. Next, I want to acknowledge the outstanding, although it may not feel this way to residents, the developer here, in my experience, has done an outstanding job trying to accommodate the needs of their objective in being a benefactor to the Boise Bible College and being considerate in providing overly generous setbacks and over landscaping in an attempt to create some barrier between the development and residents. I acknowledge that and appreciate that. I also want to make a comment that in our public hearing, there was a comment from the developer that, hey, we can't listen to everything the residents, generalizing, and this is a horrible paraphrasing, but we can't overly respond to residents because then developers get nowhere. I think this council has a demonstrated track record of behaving and performing responsibly and holding developers to code and being reasonable and having reasonable asks to responding to our public. Last, I want to state that through that election cycle, I was involved in a few different panels in which I was asked what is important to me in Garden City, and I will share that with you all here tonight, and I believe my fellow council members would agree that this is my stance, and it is the anchor to which I view most of my decision-making is anchored in the thing that keeps me up at night regarding Garden City is safety. And so as you hear deliberations and observations about this application, that will be an anchor to my perspective is, have we addressed not only code, but an overriding consideration of safety? And in my world, that safety considerations are traffic, it's parking, it's water quality, and it is ensuring that the public isn't hindered by a development negatively in their safety, moving and living within the city of Garden City. Thank you, President.
Thank you for your comments. I have a note here, and I forgot to mention this in my preamble. Please understand, members of the audience, that our deliberation must be on items that are in the record, whether that's the written record that was submitted by all the good folks out here in the audience, record that we heard in public comment. We have to make decisions on the record that is before us. So just a reminder, in the deliberations we give, And with that, and everyone's permission, I'd like to resume with finding number 1. I read the staff draft findings aloud just now. For myself, I believe that this project meets each of the findings of finding number 1 as drafted, and I do not have modified language to recommend. Turning now to Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yeah, I agree. I would adopt as it's drafted for finding 1 as well. I think it spells out everything that's that needs to be addressed in the record, and I would adopt it as well.
Thank you. Council President, I would take one exception to the draft findings, and that would be the parking needs. Although this application does meet code, there was discussion in the public hearing of common sense concern regarding the total number of parking spaces needed. The developer offered a cross parking agreement with Boise Bible College, and I would like to include that as a condition of approval.
Thank you. Councilmember Rasmussen, response?
Thank you. I guess my response to that is this application has met our code on its own. So if my fellow council members want to add that, I'm okay with that, but I certainly wouldn't request it because this application has met the parking requirements in our code. So I don't think it's necessary.
Tough crowd here. Okay, so my opinion of a cross park agreement what a cross park agreement is for the audience is one establishment agrees in writing. There's it's a contract, right? And it says, hey, we can park here when we need space, and you can park here when you need space. And so that is something that I'm willing to amend to allow for. There's nothing in the record that suggests it's necessary in the draft findings. And to Councilmember Jorgensen's point, many of you spoke that you thought the parking was probably inadequate. So that is allowable. There is a record of that opinion. So can we get a vote on that to amend for a cross park? I say yes.
I'll say yes too.
Yes.
Okay, so finding number 1, Councilmember Page finds that it meets, Rasmussen finds that it meets, Jorgensen finds that it meets. The majority is finding number 1 meets the standard.
Okay, finding 2. Just as Council President Page read finding 1, I'll start with the finding itself and then the explanation of finding. So finding 2. The proposed design shall provide effective bicycle and pedestrian access and movement to, from, within, and across the site. So that's finding 2. The explanation, the draft explanation of that finding is as follows. As designed and conditioned, this proposal provides effective bicycle and pedestrian access and movement to, from, within, and across the site. The site plan includes a system of internal pedestrian pathways that connect major building entrances to parking areas, open spaces, and the public sidewalk along Marigold Street, complying with the connectivity standards of Garden City Code Section 8-4E. A primary pedestrian route links the buildings to the public sidewalk, ensuring direct and safe access to and from the site. Crosswalks and material changes have been incorporated to enhance visibility and safety across drive aisles. The design aligns with Garden City's long-range transportation goals by including a future public access easement along the Thurman Mill Canal for a multi-use pathway. The project provides 264 bicycle parking spaces, including 236 enclosed spaces and 28 surface spaces. meeting and exceeding code requirements. Enclosed bike storage areas are located near primary building entries to support convenience and security for residents. And that concludes finding 2, including the draft explanation of finding. Council President, I would, just similar to finding 1, I would move to adopt finding 2 and the explanation of finding, the reason statement as it is written.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. And for the record, I also agree that finding number 2 is met as a reason statement drafted by staff and would vote to adopt that. Again, this is a unanimous vote on finding number 2 meeting the standard. We move to finding 3, Councilmember Jorgensen.
Finding 3, the proposed design shall be compatible with or improve the public's use of existing and planned public spaces, including but not limited to the greenbelt and pathways, sidewalks, parks, roadways, open space, public facilities, Boise River and waterways, canals, and other surface irrigation. Explanation of finding. The application is compatible with the current public use of public spaces. It provides a connected, attached, and detached sidewalk system with an 8
Supposed to be 8 foot.
8 foot, yeah, okay, thanks. 8 foot landscape buffer that will provide a safe and comfortable space for pedestrians walking along Marigold Street, a collector street. Based on documentation provided, the proposal does not exceed the level of service criteria required by ACHD or surrounding roadways. Further, based on the 2024 trip generation review prepared by Kimley Horn for the applicant and accepted by the transportation agencies, the project does not warrant mitigation at the Marigold and Glenwood intersection, as the percent of site traffic to total traffic is 2.1% in the AM peak hour and 1.6% in the PM peak hour. The design supports Garden City's long-range transportation goals by providing a public access easement along the Thurman Mill Canal. The Thurman Mill Canal will remain open as a natural amenity consistent with code requirements. The proposal to tile the drainage district number 2 canal is supported by engineering justification and agency approval due to infrastructure conflicts, ensuring continued hydraulic function while improving groundwater management. The site design includes internal pedestrian routes that connect to public sidewalks and future pathway corridors, improving accessibility for residents and visitors. Enhanced perimeter landscaping and tree planting are proposed along Marigold Street to improve the visual quality of the streetscape. President of the Council. On this finding, I am not in agreement with the findings and the documentation provided by ACHD, and I would like further clarification on the Kimley Horn report. In researching information based on the studies that were used, the reference material, the source material of ITE, I am concerned that that data can be significantly under or overestimated. Further, I have concerns regarding national studies applied to our little city, and we have each experienced significant information degradation or misalignment in what's the word, crime studies, correct? In that we have had crime studies based on national reports come in, be publicized, and this city has had to defend statements that Garden City had the highest crime rate in the state. When we dig into the details behind a report like that, there were several caveats that threw that into question. So my first concern in pulling up the ITE report and looking for information regarding that study, and this information was pulled using different resources, primarily AI searches, but I did find a common sense likely increased traffic, and a statement that was returned is research validates that ITE rates derived from suburban sites with low transit can underestimate trips in growing areas with unmodeled elements like e-commerce deliveries, visitor surges, or event-driven spikes. As we received testimony in public hearing, ACHD acknowledged that the research and reports provided did not include the professional soccer events that will be coming to the fairgrounds and will impact Garden City transit and traffic areas. Further, another comment that was returned, expected trip increases, similar projects, and this goes to the credibility of the ITE. Similar projects, for example, 2 to 250 unit multifamily and suburban US case studies add 80 to 150 PM peak trips, but real world monitoring often shows 10 to 30% higher due to undercounted modes.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Yeah.
I apologize. It's very rude to interrupt someone. The record that is before us is thoughtfully interwoven with independent research that you've done. The independent research helps us all understand how you arrive at your deliberations, and is not only interesting but appreciated, but it is off the record. There's not a record of that independent research. How can you arrive at this point you're trying to make by staying on the record?
So on the record, the applicant referenced the ITE and this study. And this returns a result on the accuracy and concerns of that study.
Thank you for the explanation. Mr. Mayor, question for council.
Yes, Mayor, Council President. Is that the question?
That is the question.
I mean, the rule is if it's not in the record, it shouldn't be considered. Independent research, Google searches outside the record cannot be considered. That would be a cause for concern in a court of law. You can come up with your own opinions, of course, but it needs to be based on the record that's been closed, as we've all made a painstaking point of that. You know, that's you can't be relying on Google searches if they're not in the record that's already been closed. With all respect to everybody.
Mr. Wadhams, just a follow-up question, and maybe you don't know, maybe you do. What's the precedent that the court's given us on using items off the record to explain the rationale of how we arrive at to explain process, not facts, not a record of fact, but a record of process arriving.
In this particular, Mayor, Council President, in this particular context, it's important to realize and remember that the council is acting in a quasi-judicial authority and not a legislative authority. So what that means is you're acting like judges or juries in this case when a jury deliberates. In the court of law, when a jury deliberates, one of the things the judge says to the jury specifically is do not do any Google searches. When you go back and deliberate, like y'all are doing right now, you go back and deliberate in the deliberations rooms. If you do a Google search, that's going to be a mistrial. If you make any kind of a decision that's not based on the record, that could be a mistrial. So everything needs to be based on what's in the record that's in front of you. If the council thinks that the record is insufficient, then the question becomes, what do you do about it? But for today's purposes, because this is a quasi-judicial deliberation, just like if you were a jury in a jury room, it has to be only on the record. And so the answer to your question is, I would say that with all respect, that would be inappropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Water. I'm going to say, Councilmember Jorgensen I respectfully admonish you to arrive at the points you are making, which are definitely valid and need to be heard in a way that is constrained to the record before us in a closed universe.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Council members, I would point you to the packet, and on the record, it would have been page 14 of the council packet that was provided on December 30th, page 14, second paragraph, which I also referenced in public testimony on the 30th. I'm going to read this paragraph in for everybody's benefit. The city has formally requested the ACHD further evaluate Marigold Street for potential capacity issues. While staff's firsthand observations and testimony from numerous neighboring residents identify concerns related to congestion and speeding along this corridor, such evidence does not establish that the application will cause safety concerns or result in Marigold Street operating below its adopted level of service. Moreover, these observations are not supported by professional methodology. In questioning Ms. Phillips indicated that they are, I believe the word, and I can actually find the phrase, commencing a study. However, this request has not been completed. And so at a bare minimum, the fact that the city has made a request that has not been completed would indicate to me that this needs to be remanded back to allow that study and the information requested by staff to be completed. My ask in getting that information completed and furthering and getting further proof and interest in the detail would be a further detail digging into and evaluating the source data and ensuring that we are not, because we are allowed, according to Ms. Heim and indicated by our council, that Ms. Heim's comments of anecdotal information should be considered and can be considered. Therefore, I think you take the concern regarding the source data and anecdotal information provided and the fact that the ACHD request has not been completed, remand and ask for further clarification and completion.
Thank you. Very well thought out. And again, I apologize for the interruption.
Nope, that's perfect.
So it's my turn to talk about this. I wrote some nice paragraphs, most of which I can't read because of my own admonition to Councilmember Jorgensen. It was eloquent too. Here's what I can say. Council members are often asked to do things we don't have the power to do. I have been asked to fix the traffic problem. There's a record that Glenwood is a street under the jurisdiction of Ada County Highway Department. Excuse me, Marigold is under the jurisdiction of the Ada County Highway District. District, not department, it's a taxation district. Whereas, why am I drawing a blank? Glenwood is under a different jurisdiction, the Idaho Department of Transportation. Here we have cross-jurisdictional problems at a very congested intersection. We're constrained by information on the record. I have a direct quote in my material that Councilmember Jorgensen has already read, and many of you have too. That is the statement from the Department of Transportation, written comments admonishing the Garden City officials to be wary of an intersection that's already congested. As if we weren't aware or had any power to fix that. there in the legal world, there's a thing called judicial notice, where an attorney asks the judge to make a notice of things that would be automatically known by the common person, such as that the sun rises in the morning, sets in the west in the evening. And I don't know, Mr. Wadhams, if there's a judicial notice component to what we're doing here, but it is clear that this intersection is tight. It's difficult to get in and out onto these roads. We heard a record from many of you about one, and I should have written it down, but one member of the community told me that they had sat through 3 light cycles to get to have the ability to address that intersection with their own vehicle. That seems excessive. It seems unusual for Idaho. That's better said. It seems unusual for Idaho, right? We don't see that kind of traffic yet. So congratulations, you are traffic leaders. But you know, really across the state, frankly, we don't see that. You don't see that in Riggins, right? So I hear that and I empathize. And as a council member, it's frustrating to be asked to fix things, but not have the power, the money, or a highway department to help us with that. 2 jurisdictions that control this intersection are sending council a mixed message. The Kimley Horn study commissioned by the applicant uses methodology that's widely accepted in the industry to arrive at a trip count that many of us who live in the city anecdotally, there's that word again, believe is minimized. So as a decision maker, who should I believe? Then I have a bunch of stuff I can't read to you. That was powerful. As for my vote on this finding, I must be constrained to scientific methods. While I may disagree, I'm not a traffic expert, and I am led to believe that Kimley Horn are traffic engineering experts and that they relied on manuals and source material that is broadly accepted in the United States. Therefore, I have to adopt this finding as written.
Thank you, Council President and Councilmember Jorgensen for bringing this topic forward as part of this application. I think it's worth, speaking for myself, reminding myself that this report is a model. So it very well may be less, it very well may be more. But it's at least a stab at what impacts this this project can contribute to Marigold, Garrett, and the intersection at Marigold and Glenwood. One of the other things that jumps out at me about this whole traffic question is the numbers of 2.1 contribution. And again, this is a model. That's what could be 2.1% of all the traffic in the AM peak hour and 1.6 in the PM peak hour. Those are estimates. Even if it's 3% in the morning and 2.5 in the evening, so a full percent more almost, it's not very much, because Glenwood and Marigold are already a mess, right? So where my brain goes when I consider this whole traffic thing, I feel like this application's getting blamed for traffic on that street, and it's going to contribute to it, but not very much. And to me, the big opportunity with that whole route of Garrett through Marigold to Glenwood or vice versa, depending on which direction the person's going. Most of those people, maybe not most, but a good majority of them, again, nobody knows for sure, are non-residents of the area. So I'd like to see us as an outgrowth of this application, partner, and I'll do what I can here, but work with ACHD to figure out ways. They're the experts. I am not, but there's got to be ways we can deter, basically, I'll call them cut-throughers. Because that to me is the big issue with Marigold. There's a ton of people coming from West Boise trying to get to North Boise. And they're using Marigold and Garrett. How do we deter those? We can't obviously make them private streets for just people that live there, but we can deter through lower speed limits and other things that cost money, which I know isn't really there. But there's got to be things that can be done in the long run to mitigate the cut through traffic on there. So with respect to Councilmember Jorgensen's bringing this topic up, I agree with Council President Page that I would move to adopt this. I think the study is what we have. It's a standard nationally. There isn't another solution to help model what's going on here with traffic than that ITE. So again, reiterating, but I would move to adopt the explanation of finding 3 as drafted.
Okay, by my count, Page votes to adopt, Rasmussen votes to adopt, Jorgensen votes to reject. That's 2-1. Majority goes with adopt, finding 3. Finding 4. This is a big one, folks. Stick around. Don't leave. True point. The proposed design shall be compatible with the neighborhood in scale and intensity. These are the draft words from staff. The proposed use is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods because it complies with the standards established for the R3 zoning district. Under Garden City zoning code, these parameters are predetermined by municipal code to define what is considered compatible with the zoning classification. Therefore, the use, proposed height, and density are not only permitted, but expressly contemplated by the R3 zoning district regulations, making them consistent and compatible with the neighborhood within the adopted zoning framework. The property is zoned R3 medium density residential. This zoning district allows multifamily dwellings. The proposed density for approximately 33 to 34 dwelling units per acre per parcel complies with the maximum allowed density of 35 units per acre under R3 standards. While the proposed buildings are 4 stories, this height is permitted by code and was established under the 2015 amendment to the R3 zoning district. Significant setbacks assist in mitigating the impacts of the height, with building 1 setback 32 feet from Marigold Street and eastern setbacks ranging from 88 to 152 feet from adjacent single family homes, providing a much larger buffer than what code requires. Given compliance with R3 zoning standards, substantial setbacks, perimeter landscaping, and mitigation measures, the proposed design meets the threshold to be considered compatible with the neighborhood in scale and intensity as defined by Garden City Code, even though its form differs from adjacent single-family homes. Perimeter landscaping and a 6-foot opaque fence along the eastern property line create a physical and visual transition between the multifamily development and the adjacent single-family neighborhood. The enhanced landscaping, including evergreen trees along the east edge, softens the interface between properties. The combination of solid fencing and enhanced landscaping, including an extra deep landscape buffer, 15 feet instead of 10 feet, and 69 trees more than required by code on the eastern boundary serves to mitigate potential lighting and privacy impacts associated with the new parking lot. Traffic and parking impacts have been reviewed by the Ada County Highway District, which found that the development will not exceed level of service thresholds for Marigold Street. While there is public concern that the design is urban in character, the proposal meets code standards and incorporates articulation, material variation, landscaping, and open space, which will assist in reducing perceived mass and improve visual quality. On-site parking meets code requirements. The enhancement will assist in minimizing spillover impacts on surrounding streets. This is what I think about that. Let me find it. I want to talk for a bit about compatibility of this application with the existing neighborhoods. It is important to note that the comprehensive plan and relevant code sections use the word compatibility, not the word similarity, not the word identical, not the word indistinguishable or uniformity. It should not be lost on anyone in this room that diversity of housing is a stated goal in the comprehensive plan. Let me turn to the lack of compatibility when considering scale. I, like many of you, I was struck with the raw numbers presented in the Jenkins comments, which was introduced during the public hearing. The Jenkins exhibit showed that of the 919 single-family homes in this quadrant of Garden City, 83% were single-story, 17% were two-story, and 0% were three-story or taller. The exhibit showed that 18 multifamily housing structures within 2 developments were 3 stories. The exhibit was clear that there was no housing structures or commercial structures in this quadrant that were 4 stories. In her written comments, Ms. Jackson-Heim correctly states that the uses allowed in a zoning designation and the maximum allowed density is not a guarantee of application approval when built to the maximum allowed density. Moreover, Jackson-Heim is correct to note that the council has already recognized the current R3 zoning designation is incompatible with several of the surrounding neighborhoods. I recall a number of applications where this particular composition of sitting council members considered proposed R3 zoning inventory that was overwhelmingly a majority of the neighbors west of Glenwood and north of the river wrote letters or showed up to each and every design review meeting, planning and zoning meeting, and city council meeting to testify that the proposal was overscaled and too intense. Each of us council members witnessed these constituents repeatedly expressing frustration with the lack of scaling guardrails in the R3 zone. As a council, we heard their testimony and deliberated. In our deliberations, we grappled with the acknowledgement of the community's rational arguments, but nevertheless, we went on to approve these applications because they were in fact a permitted use in the R3 zone. I'm not saying we should have voted any different based on the propriety of those proposals in the R3 zoning designations. But speaking for myself, each time I left a meeting, I felt a growing resolve in the pit of my stomach that as a council, we ought to amend our zoning code in a way that honored the views of these largely single-family neighborhoods, while not restricting the other Garden City neighborhoods that prefer taller multifamily inventory. So how did we respond as a council to the constituents who elected us to represent them? We directed city staff to create a new zoning designation. City staff worked feverishly to create an RM zoning designation. And while the proposed zoning code amendment is not perfect in the eyes of many of you, even my own eyes. Now I lost my place. If executed correctly, the new proposed zoning designation will serve to prevent towering multifamily homes from being built next to 1- and 2-story single-family homes west of Glenwood and north of the river. This, at its core, is really what's being requested by our constituents. Certainly their constituents in this room. Let me be clear, Garden City needs tall buildings. We are bounded on all sides. Taller developments allow Garden City to continue providing housing for the masses who want to live in our beautiful city near the river and still be close to high-paying jobs in the downtown corridor of Boise. These professionals prefer not having yards to mow. They want to cycle or walk to their workplaces and shopping. Many have testified that they prefer having fewer cars. We've heard them say they don't want to hassle with the challenges and expenses that many single-family homeowners experience when forced to replace their roofs, maintain or replace expensive HVAC equipment, care for vast yards and landscaping, and countless other demanding tasks inherent with owning a single-family home. When single-family homeowners can't keep up with these costs, their homes often fall into disrepair, become unsafe and unsightly. Overburdened homeowners often wish to sell their homes in favor of finding carefree apartments, condos, townhomes, senior living communities, but still remain in Garden City, close to the river and close to the downtown corridor of Boise. This is why diversity of housing is important. This is only one reason the proposed RM zoning designation will not be applied to the portion of the city that's east of Glenwood and south of the river, because doing so encourages variety of housing that's called for in our comprehensive plan, and areas of the city where our voters appreciate taller multi-family structures as not only compatible with their neighborhood scale and intensity, but also as preferred marketplace inventory. Ultimately, I myself agree with the majority of constituents that the scale of this application as applied to this quadrant of Garden City exceeds scale and intensity. This, in my opinion, makes the proposed application as it is currently designed incompatible at this location. The applicant in this case has failed to meet its burden of demonstrating that the proposed design is compatible with this particular neighborhood in scale and intensity. So how can the application be remedied for approval? That's required. We have to do that. Here's the remedy, I think. In the public hearing, Mr. Roop told the council, Mr. Roop's the applicant, one of the applicant team members. Mr. Roop told the council that he had built multifamily developments all across the nation. Surely his vast development expertise and the talented professionals who comprise his application team can go back to the drawing board and meet in earnest with community members in this room, perhaps some of the people in this room, to find a suitable compromise. But the key word here is compromise. If this, for example, if this proposal is reduced to 3 stories, which many of you prefer, that likely comes at a cost. What cost? First, I would anticipate, since there's less at the top, there's more buildings, more than the 2 buildings that are proposed. I would anticipate reduced space amenities, drastically reduced setbacks, leading to new family structures, multifamily structures being built physically much closer to the adjacent single family homes that already exist. So gone will be these massive setbacks that are proposed. Here I can acknowledge, and so should every person in this room, that Mr. Roop and his design team have been generous with this particular proposal, offering vast setbacks, nicer amenities, and far more trees and upscale landscape buffers than are required. If redesigned to better meet scale and intensity, like this community is asking for, the community must be prepared for the resulting consequences of that compromise. To be sure, not every person in this room will be pleased by any compromise design. That's just not going to happen. And that's the very definition of compromise. I'll turn the decision of finding 4 to Councilmember Rasmussen.
So,
Respectfully, President of the Council, so your remedy is to
Remand for a redesign compromise to address scale and intensity. That's finding number 4.
Thank you.
Maybe the first thing, and thank you for your well thought out comments on that finding. Maybe the first thing I should probably mention is I'm very much a rule follower. I've been that way ever since I was a little kid. And this application has done, the developer, the applicant has done a lot to meet the rules. We've talked about a new Council President Page talked about the fact that we did discuss a rezone of that area, but it hasn't taken effect yet. And so right now the code is that this is R3, and this application meets that. So that's what I consider when I consider these applications, is what is our code right now, and that's what it is. And it more than meets some of those standards in terms of setbacks, perimeter landscaping. Those two are far and exceed what our code requires. So, and those two things led to what most of the public testimony was driving towards, was visibility to neighboring yards, that kind of thing. And the landscaping and the setbacks are all things that the applicant has taken into account and done far more than code requires. I guess that would probably close my comments on that one. So my position on finding 4 is to adopt it.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen.
President of the Council, appreciate your comments. I am in alignment with many of those comments. One particularly that jumped out was the visual representation in public testimony of the disparate appearance and size of the products in currently existing and this application. I particularly, as you heard me question, was the actual appearance of this product, and also the concern and desire to allow the community to work more closely with the applicant to come up with a compromise. And I echo your comment and observation that likely if there is a change, that change will come with side effects, right? And we all have to be prepared to accept those. Further, I would again reiterate my concern regarding the integrity of the traffic, although traffic study and report, although based on professional methodologies, I think there's extreme volumes of anecdotal information and observations that open up the question regarding the validity there. And I would also reiterate that I believe that the staff should have the opportunity to elicit from ACHD a completion of the requested task detailed on page 14 in the prior packet. Therefore, my vote is to remand in alignment with the recommendation of President of the Council and include the opportunity for staff to work with ACHD to accelerate and get the detailed information requested previously.
Thank you, Councilmember Jorgensen. I would like to talk a little bit about what a remand means. A remand is not a denial. Moreover, in a remand, an application keeps its original application date, and that is procedurally important in this case for reasons that should be obvious. So by finding number 4, Page finds that this application does not meet as drawn. Rasmussen finds that it does meet the findings. Jorgensen finds that this application does not meet the finding. Majority vote does not meet. Let's move to finding 5.
Mr. Mayor, Council President. Can I ask for a quick point of order on that,
Yes.
please? Mayor, Council President, so I hear that there's been a 2-to-1 vote to remand based on the finding that finding 4 has not been satisfied. So I would request just for the people that are going to be drafting your decision document, I would say that if the City Council determines that the project does not meet a standard, it must provide substantial evidence to support its conclusion and issue a written decision that explains the basis for the denial in accordance with LUPA's requirements. So if 2-to-1, I'm hearing that it doesn't meet this criteria, can you, for the record, indicate what substantial evidence you're relying on to indicate it does not meet this criteria, please?
Thank you, Mr. Wadhams. Speaking for myself, I relied on the public comments in the open hearing. Every single non-applicant who spoke was of the opinion that the scale and intensity of this project was exceeded for the neighborhood and incompatible. The written comments, each written comment that I read also indicated the same sentiment. I heard no support for this scale and intensity being proper for the neighborhood. And so the evidence I would point to is the community testimony and written comments from the community.
Mayor, Council President, if I may, so is it you're saying that 4 stories is not compatible? Is that basically what you're saying, or are you saying something else?
Yes, I would say the 4 stories is the most common resonating gripe. Gripe's the wrong word. It's not a gripe. It's a valid concern. And therefore, it's the height of the structure that is the biggest concern of many. So yes, 4 stories is too tall. It's too high.
In that context, if Councilmember Jorgensen agrees with that, I would suggest that we put that in the decision document.
I do agree with it, and I would cite specifically Ms. Hines' written testimony.
Mayor, Council President, thank you. We can articulate that in the decision document if instructed. Thank you.
Mr. Wadhams.
Mayor, Council Member.
Yeah, so a question on that. If R3 currently has no height limit, is that effective evidence for that argument?
Mayor, Council Member Rasmussen, yes, if there's evidence in the record that indicates, I mean, the one question is whether it complies with code, but then the second, I mean, that's the basic or the base standard, but then the question beyond that is whether it's compatible. Compatible is wording that the Supreme Court has found is acceptable. Compatible is a word that's used with comprehensive plan and stuff like that. So the standard is good as long as you feel that there's evidence that supports your decision. But again, for the decision document, if you could just specify exactly what it is, and I think that would also be helpful for the applicant, so the applicant knows what they have to do comply with this compatibility piece.
Thank you for that answer. Again, my rule follower is jumping out at me right now, so thank you.
Thank you.
I think that, if I may, I think the takeaway that struck me was the Jackson Heim letter, where it correctly states that building to the maximum allowed in that zoning designation is not an automatic guarantee of approval. Here, nothing could ring more true.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President, Council members. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Finding 5 is next, and I'm going to be reading a long time, so I'm just curious. Should we do maybe a quick query?
Mr. Mayor, let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay, we will recess until 5:35.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Councilmember Rasmussen, I think we're on number 5.
We are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can we just get 1 second longer? We had a sticky spill up here, and
We got the
the city
lawyer
attorney
wet?
went to get some. Yeah, we put the lawyer
We
on
got
it.
the lawyer wet? Okay. By sticky, I mean.
It's Red Bull. It gave him wings.
Did he spill it or did
He did. It's his. Wasn't me. Exactly. Good slogan. That was very impressive. I didn't Okay.
Okay, we have a slight delay while the lawyer cleans up his Red Bull.
All good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I initiated that break, and I appreciate that. The next finding is finding 5. So the finding itself is the proposed design shall not create an adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So the reason statement, the explanation of that finding starts this way. There is significant public concern regarding potential adverse impacts on the neighborhood. Concerns raised include congestion, traffic safety, parking, structural massing, architectural design, environmental impacts, drainage, income levels of potential tenants, light trespass, privacy, stain on public services, and water and sewer infrastructures.
Straight.
What did I say?
It's a typo.
Oh, sorry. I read right through that. My apologies. Thank you. However, these issues are co-compliant or have been mitigated through conditions of approval. As conditioned, the proposed design will not create an undue adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. For purposes of this finding, undue means impacts that exceed those reasonably anticipated for permitted use under applicable zoning and design standards. The neighbor's testimony identifies legitimate perceived traffic service concerns or traffic safety risks, and we credit those observations for describing current conditions. However, to establish noncompliance with the applicable traffic standards, the decision must rely on substantial evidence tied to adopted metrics and professional methodology. The only professional analyses in the record are ACHD's review and the applicant's traffic study, both of which conclude that the additional traffic generated by the development will not exceed the adopted level of service threshold for Marigold Street. Marigold Street is classified as a residential collector roadway for which ACHD policy allows up to 530 vehicle trips during the PM peak hour. Existing PM peak hour traffic volumes are 391 trips. The proposed project is expected to generate an additional 92 PM peak hour trips, resulting in a total of approximately 483 PM peak hour trips, which remains below the adopted service level threshold. Further, based on the 2024 trip generation review by Kimley Horn provided by applicant and accepted by the transportation agencies, the project does not warrant mitigation at the Marigold-Glenwood intersection, as the percent of site traffic to total traffic is 2.1% in the AM peak hour and 1.6 in the PM peak hour. The application proposes 2 access points, including 1 shared access with Boise Bible College. Minimizing the number of access points onto Marigold Street is desirable to reduce vehicular conflict points and limit pedestrian exposure. This is because additional entrances increase the number of potential interaction points between vehicles and vehicles and pedestrians, thereby elevating safety risks. Consistent with this principle, staff recommended that the combined uses of the adjacent Boise Bible College and the Antioch Apartments be served by 2 access points, with internal circulation occurring within the development rather than relying on Marigold. One of the proposed access points exceeds the width typically permitted under ACHD policies. However, ACHD has recommended approval of the wider access under these circumstances. To mitigate safety concerns associated with the 2 new proposed accesses, the applicant has proposed relocating the wider entrance to align with the existing pintail access, which is controlled by stop signs. Additional conditions of approval further reduce pedestrian exposure by requiring bulb outs to narrow the vehicular apron and extending the landscape island to function as a pedestrian refuge. These measures reduce pedestrian exposure. The secondary condition also requires that the vehicular apron be designed so that the sidewalk maintains a flush and consistent grade across the driveway. This measure reduces the need for individuals with mobility impairments to navigate repetitive and unnecessary inclines. There is a condition of approval that prior to building permit issuance, the applicant must obtain and comply with all required ACHD permits and reviews and complete the traffic-related improvements as conditioned by ACHD. These conditions, together with ACHD's findings that adopted levels of service will not be exceeded, address concerns raised in public comments regarding traffic safety and congestion. The project provides 392 parking spaces, exceeding the cumulative requirement of 389 spaces under Garden City Code, exceeding by 3. And bicycle parking also meets code requirements, reducing reliance on vehicles and minimizing overflow parking on adjacent streets. The applicant is required to provide an acceptable solution to the sewer constraints to ensure that levels of service are not exceeded. The use, massing, and as condition, architectural design comply with Garden City Code, Title 8, and all findings required for applications processed under Garden City Code 8-6B-3 design review. The design incorporates substantial setbacks up to 152 feet for building 1 and 88 feet for building 2 from the property line of adjacent homes and perimeter landscaping, including evergreen trees and a 6-foot privacy fence to buffer the development from neighboring properties from lighting and privacy concerns. Building articulation and material variation reduces perceived mass and visual dominance and addresses privacy concerns. During the public hearing, the applicant indicated that they will add a wall to the carports to mitigate light trespass. North Ada County Fire and Rescue reviewed the application and approved it subject to compliance with fire code requirements. Stormwater management uses permeable pavers and landscape drainage features to reduce runoff impacts. And sewer capacity concerns have been addressed through an alternative connection plan conditioned for review for compliance prior to construction. To address neighboring properties' concerns regarding noise and odor, trash enclosures were moved to the west side of the property during the hearing. And during the hearing, the applicant indicated they will also relocate the recycling, further minimizing impact on the neighborhood. There is a condition that construction activities shall be limited to designated hours in order to minimize construction noise impacts on the adjacent neighborhood. Upon completion of the project, the property shall be subject to the same noise regulations that apply uniformly throughout the city. The applicant is required to pay ACHD and NACFR impact fees. That's the fire district, impact fees, as well as water and sewer connection fees. These fees are established to address the impact of the development on the roadway, fire, and water and sewer systems. Concerns were also raised regarding the compatibility of the proposed units being affordable and therefore incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Federal and state fair housing laws prohibit land use decisions based on the income level or voucher status of prospective residents. Accordingly, this decision does not consider the identity, socioeconomic status, or household characteristics of future occupants. The proposed development does not constitute illegal spot zoning. Properties to the west and south are similarly zoned R3. Properties to the north and east are zoned R2. The applicant has not requested a rezone of the property. Claims that the Boise Bible College property was subject to spot zoning without proper notice in 2015 are incorrect and not germane to the current application. The 2015 action was a citywide rezone affecting all properties zoned R3. At that time, the city council determined that the code amendment complied with a comprehensive plan and was legally noticed. Regardless of these assertions, the statutory period to contest that application has long expired. Concerns were raised regarding the potential for flooding of adjoining properties as a result of enclosing or tiling the existing drainage ditch. Under Idaho law, a land use approval may not authorize development that causes unlawful diversion, obstruction, or concentration of surface or storm water resulting in material damage to adjacent properties. The improvements shall be designed by qualified engineering staff to ensure that the risk of flooding on adjacent properties is not increased. A further condition is required that the ditch be maintained in perpetuity. Okay, so that concludes finding 5 and the proposed explanation of finding. So some of the topics highlighted in finding 5, we have already discussed, but in my discussion around finding 5, I've got some comments that I've prepared, and I'll go through them and make sure I, as we've all learned, read things I can read and avoid things I can't read. Regarding scale, building height, and density. So this application, if built, I'll speak for myself, I acknowledge will be a significant residential addition to this part of the city. It just will be. It's a big project. I understand the concern of residents here, but the proposal has several substantial built-in buffers that exceed code requirements that reduce the impacts to neighboring property owners that I think warrant highlighting. For starters, setbacks from residential properties to the east, and this is a bit of a reiteration, but I think it's worth highlighting, 152 feet and 88 feet. In this zone, required rear setbacks are 15 feet and side setbacks are required of 5 feet. I'm, as someone that's spent some time on planning and zoning and fortunate enough to sit up here with my fellow council members and mayor, I've seen a fair amount of applications for new developments, and I haven't seen ever this much space and setbacks. So this application has massively exceeded the requirements with regard to setbacks, because I believe they stated at the public hearing in their rebuttal that they knew that was going to be a topic. So they did the best they could on the parcels that are there to make those setbacks as large as they possibly could. Okay. My apologies. Regarding building heights, the proposed setbacks and perimeter landscaping greatly mitigate any perceived intrusion or visibility from new buildings, even though these buildings are 4 stories. A different proposal that could be in for this parcel, it could have been proposed that they would be single family or townhomes that would have to adhere to a 15-foot setback, because chances are single family homes would be right along that east side property line. And they could be, given the land values now in the entire Boise area, that would probably be quite dense compared to what's there now. And possibly multi-story townhomes or whatever. So with a 15-foot setback that would be required, it seems to me that it would be possible that visibility into neighboring yards could potentially be quite worse. Again, the developer, the applicant did the best they could with the parcels that this project would be on to make those setbacks as deep as possible with respect to their building heights. And not to mention the landscape. The additional landscape buffer was another thing that they added. Density. The 2 buildings are obviously denser in their footprints than single family or townhomes, going back to a point I was making a minute ago. But it might be too assumptive to think that single family homes or townhomes would not come close in number of dwelling units, because I suspect these parcels would be covered much more intensely in that scenario in order for the project to likely pencil for the applicant, and much closer to existing homeowners in the area given setback allowances and code. I acknowledge that this is just speculation, but assuming townhomes and single family homes would mitigate many of the density concerns raised is also just speculation. I touched on landscaping already. I'll just read this. An additional benefit of this application relative to any an additional benefit of this application is the generous landscape buffer effectively shielding adjacent properties from the proposed buildings. Code already requires significant buffering, but the applicant has exceeded code requirements and depth of landscape buffer such that 69 more trees are required along the eastern property line. We saw many photographs during public testimony. The Jenkins testimony again, Jennings, I got it backwards again. I'm sorry. Anyway, I appreciated that testimony because she put in a lot of effort to get those photos and present them to us, and they were very impactful. I don't believe, and I think somebody else presented photos as well, but I can't remember the name of that person that presented those photos, but there were 2. Okay, thank you. However, I don't believe any of those photos depicted any landscape buffering whatsoever. We saw a building and a parking lot and a lot of lights. This project, as it's been presented to us in the applicant materials, the buffering is far different than any of those pictures that we saw. And then again, also likely with a single family or townhome proposal, because of the much smaller setback, fewer trees would almost be certain, with again, much closer dwelling units to existing dwelling units. Okay. Mr. Wadhams, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So in the draft explanation of that finding, there are some concerns about property values. Can I address that based on research I had done a year or two ago?
If your research is not, the mayor, council member, if your research is not part of the record, I
Okay.
recommend against it.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
Mhm.
So that concludes my commentary on finding 5. Again, it's a big project and everybody that's here tonight has valid concerns, and it is different than the surrounding area. However, our code allows it. So because of that, I would vote to adopt finding 5. Thank you, Council President.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember, and this will likely not come as any surprise to anybody in this room. I would vote to remand. I find that the anecdotal information and the gap between ACHD and the city's request is enough to ask for more information, and with the request that a more detailed analysis be considered. But beyond that, on page 15, third paragraph from the bottom, we continue to reference a 2024 study. In public testimony, there was observationally testimony that there was a traffic counter or some assessment that was made along Marigold. In Ms. Jackson-Himes' written testimony, you will take note of that. We discussed it somewhat, and I apologize to the council members because at the time, I believe Councilmember Page said you did not believe that that had any relevance to this. However, in remanding, I would request and ask that we allow that study, that we identify what that study is or was, who conducted it, allow that study to be considered, and if that study does impact the counts to warrant mitigation, that it be allowed.
Councilmember Jorgensen, clarification, please. I heard testimony from a community member that had been out counting cars with some friends or associates. I think he said his kids helped him, his adult kids. And then I heard mention of a Garden City string across the road type study. Which are you referring to?
It was the assumption that Miss Jackson-Himes' observation that she reported was a Garden City study. That needs to be validated and verified. And that would be the study that I would propose be allowed, since that was not a manual count. Moving on. Sorry.
Pardon me. I want to state for the record, I don't know why those counters were put on the road. I don't know if I wanted to hear it characterized as a study. I think the police department routinely gets information on sometimes traffic counts, sometimes traffic speed to get average speeds to help inform our traffic enforcement team on where they need to pay attention to some areas. So if you want the information, that's great, but I'm not sure I would characterize it as a study because I don't know that to be factually accurate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would add the caveat that if the information would appear to have an impact on traffic volume and traffic counts, that it be allowed.
Mr. Mayor, Council President. And shame on me for not knowing this. Is that in the record?
Yes, it's both in the written and the verbal testimony that was provided.
Okay. Then it's already added?
The study or the whatever information that was derived from that was not, it was referenced in testimony.
Okay.
That is why remand and stipulate and the request is
Thank
to
you for
allow.
clarifying.
Yeah.
Just as a matter of recall, I attempted to get a hold of the police department, and I informed on the record that the stealth, we call them a stealth counter. You don't know what they are. They look like something other than a traffic counter. They were having trouble downloading the data. So if you recall, that was a statement I made on the record. So
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Going forward on page 16 regarding the parking spaces, again, I would reference my findings in finding 1, conditioning on a cross parking agreement. I very much appreciate the applicant adding a wall to mitigate light trespass. I was very concerned about water and the flooding or potential flooding. However, I find the information and the mitigation and the requirements sufficient. So with the 2 items regarding remanding for the further ACHD compliance to the city's request, potentially including a study, I can't think of another word, that was referenced in public testimony, and including the conditional, the cross-parking arrangement as a condition, I would vote to remand.
Council President, I'm sorry to interrupt. I missed a paragraph in my comments. Can I add that, please? Okay, it's short. And it does address the parking concerns, because when you said that, I thought, okay, I did not add that. So my comments are, I appreciate the concerns definitely about nearby residents about the proposed supply of on-site parking for this project. As we've already discussed, exceeded code requirement, and furthermore, the concern about spillover onto nearby residential streets, in my mind, is not likely at all due to the higher supplied on-site parking relative to code, and that the parking will be included with rent. In other words, they're not going to have to pay for spaces in addition to the rent that they will be paying for dwelling in this project. The other thing I thought was worth calling out is oftentimes when people park on the streets instead of the parking that's provided for the project, that usually happens, maybe not always, but usually happens when the distance of nearby streets is very close or closer to their front door than otherwise. And in my mind, I don't think that's the case here, because there is no parking on Marigold. And the distance of other nearby streets is very, very likely further than the parking lots to all the front doors in this project. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you. Thank you for allowing that.
Thank you. I'll speak real quickly to that. I agree that the distance, by the time you can make it across, through this buffer area, across Marigold into Pintel or a neighboring street where parking is lawful, that's really quite a hike, and quite a hike with an armful of groceries. It's burdensome. I think people would be inclined to park in designated parking spots. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to renew my observation that anything that is not 3 stories or under in this quadrant of the city is incompatible and creates an adverse impact. Some mention has been made of the photos or drawings. Somebody made some drawings that had what these buildings would look like behind a single family home, and I appreciate that. I would counter with from my home I can see Bogus Basin. That doesn't mean that's the only thing I see. Right, there's a distance there that creates a buffer, and this project has tremendous buffers. So just because it's back there and it's tall doesn't mean that's all you're going to see when you look out your window. But I would renew that that this project, when it comes, needs to be 3 stories or less. So I vote remand on finding 5. Which takes us to finding 6. This one's me.
Mm.
Teresa.
Mr. Roddams, before I begin, did you need any further clarification? Or has everything that's been provided so far sufficed?
Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, I was just pondering whether I should say this now or later. So given the opportunity, I'll say it now. Finding 5. So it sounds like the council is saying the proposed design does create an adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. Is that what I heard?
That's correct.
And-
2 people said that.
Okay, and have we summarized why? Do you feel comfortable about summarizing why it creates an adverse impact?
Mine's for one reason, adverse impact because it's too tall. It's a story too tall for that area. It's adverse because it doesn't match the neighborhood, and that comes from the testimony of the neighbors and their written comments.
Council President, is it just height or is it also the amount of units that are proposed?
Just height.
I don't know if that's consistent with the other council member, but
The other
No,
council member definitely.
I voted to adopt.
Councilmember Jorgensen, does that capture your thoughts on it? The height? or
Yes,
is it
Mr.
also
Roddams.
The units, it's height.
Correct, Mr. Roddams.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Councilmember Jorgensen, please.
All right, we are now on finding 6. The proposed architecture and site improvements shall have facades, features, materials, and building form and other physical improvements that are compatible with or enhance the neighborhood. The explanation of finding. The proposed architecture and site improvements incorporate design elements intended to meet Garden City Code standards and enhance neighborhood compatibility. The building elevations include articulation through wall offsets, recessed areas, balconies, and varied materials, which reduce visual mass and create pedestrian scale interest. Materials include brick, accent colors, and durable finishes consistent with multifamily residential standards. These updates improve wayfinding and create focal points, addressing prior concerns about unclear entry sequences. In response to recommendations from the design review consultants to strengthen primary entries and improve hierarchy, the applicant added enlarged entry canopies with accent colors at major entrances, expanded brick massing at building corners for visual anchoring, and brick inlay patterns near entries to provide craftsmanship and detail. This has been further conditioned to require the primary entries be clearly identifiable and provide additional facade refinement. Site improvements include enhanced perimeter landscaping and evergreen buffers that soften the transition to adjacent single-family homes. Street-facing improvements feature a detached sidewalk with an 8-foot landscape buffer and class 2 or 3 trees as conditioned to improve the public realm. While the building height of 4 stories differs from surrounding 1- and 2-story homes, this form is permitted under the R3 zoning district. Architectural detailing and landscaping mitigate perceived scale and intensity, aligning with the intent of Garden City's design standards. Conditions of approval require confirmation that secondary entries also receive canopy or material emphasis to ensure consistency across the site. And additional conditions address tree species selection and screening of service areas to maintain visual quality. Allegations have been raised asserting that the proposed development does not comply with the Garden City Comprehensive Plan. A formal finding of compliance with the comprehensive plan is not required by City Code for a design review application, and the comprehensive plan itself is not a legally binding regulatory document in this context. However, it is an important guiding policy document and should inform the decision-making process. Upon review, we do not find that the application is in direct conflict with the comprehensive plan. To the contrary, several elements of the proposal are supported by specific comprehensive plan objectives. These include Objectives 6.2 and 6.3, which encourage the creation and maintenance of diverse housing opportunities. Objective 2.3, which promotes high-quality design and architecturally engaging buildings. Objective 4.1 and 4.3, which call for enhanced landscaping, beautification of trees and sidewalks, and incorporation of trees and public art. And Objective 7.1, which supports the development of pedestrian and bicycle-friendly connections. Once again, I have to applaud and recognize the applicant and the efforts here to provide an application that has significant landscaping materials and resolutions beyond what is required in code. However, the height of 4 stories does differ, and as indicated previously, should be remanded for a compromise and discussion and further input from the community. I do believe that there are many attributes of this application that enhance and support our comprehensive plan. But once again, my recommendation is to remand to remedy the size and intensity of this development.
Thank you. I don't have as much to say about finding 7. Sorry, 6. I've got a lot to say about 7. About finding 6. I'm sorry about this. I believe for the type of inventory that this building is, it looks great, proper. I heard on the record many people complain about the lack of a gabled roof because the majority of roofs in the area are gabled, and you know, for a building, I think a 1- and 2-story building looks proper with a gable. 3 stories can be gable or flat, and it looks okay. But I've never, I can't recall seeing a 4, 5, 6, 10, 12-story building that has gables because of the parapet, the necessary parapets to hide utilities. I think a gabled roof would look improper with a building of this scale. That said, the request under remand is to lower the height to no more than 3 stories, and I would leave it to the capable hands of this developer's design team to come up with something as beautiful as this this appears on paper already. I appreciate the landscape materials, the excessive, more than required class 1 and 2 trees, and just really the effort to try to blend as much as possible this different inventory from the inventory that's in the neighborhood. I appreciated the applicant's efforts to warm the colors and redesign entrances to be more prominent. So I would find that this the reason statement in finding 6, the only thing that is inadequate is that the proposed architecture, again, is just too tall. And that's my only complaint. So on remand, it's to find a design that's 3 stories or less.
Thank you. My comments on this are, it's very much a finding that is centered around architectural components and features around architecture. And I know in the record, there's a lot of examples of our design review consultants working with the applicant to modify the original application and to make changes so that it does align with code. So I applaud those conversations that our design review consultants had with the applicant and how the applicant was able to address those comments and concerns. And with regard to the reiterated statement from my fellow council members about height, I'm in a different place on that. So I'm going to vote to adopt finding 6 as well.
Finding 7. The proposed design and landscape shall improve the design and function of the site and be consistent with the Southwest Idaho climatic conditions. Here's the draft reason statement. As conditioned, the proposed design provides outdoor spaces and landscaping that are compatible with Southwest Idaho climatic conditions. The design and landscape improve the site's functionality and respond to the regional climate by organizing buildings, parking areas, and open spaces to create clear pedestrian and vehicular circulation. Trash enclosures and service areas are screened and integrated into the site design to minimize visual and acoustic impacts. Landscaping exceeds minimum code requirements, with 14% of the site landscaped excluding setbacks, and more than 50,000 square feet of dedicated space, open space to parcel 4. Perimeter buffers and evergreen plantings provide privacy and mitigate visual impacts on adjacent residential properties, while landscaped islands in parking areas and street trees along Marigold enhance aesthetics and environmental performance. Plant selections include drought-tolerant species suitable for Southwest Idaho's semi-arid climate, reducing irrigation demand. Stormwater management incorporates permeable pavers and landscape drainage features to support infiltration and reduce runoff during seasonal precipitation events. Building materials and finishes are durable and appropriate for local temperature fluctuations and freeze-thaw cycles. Class 2 or 3 street trees along Marigold to provide shade and long-term canopy growth, improving microclimate and pedestrian comfort. Sustainable measures, including green building certification, further align the project with regional environmental goals. I feel that finding 7 meets. I like the draft language and think it's proper.
Council President, I agree. I think finding 7's explanation and reason statement is adoptable. Therefore, I will.
I concur. I would approve adoption of finding the reason statement for finding 7 as drafted.
For the record show, finding 7 is a unanimous adoption.
Moving on to finding 8. Yes, finding 8 is me. Yes. Okay, the statement is, the finding itself is, the proposed design shall be compatible with applicable natural, scenic, and historic features, including but not limited to wetlands, the Boise River, waterways, and historic structures. The draft explanation of finding is, the proposed design is compatible with natural and scenic features and does not adversely affect historic resources. This site includes 2 waterways, the Thurman Mill Canal along the southern property boundary and the Drainage District number 2 canal along the northeastern boundary. Thurman Mill Canal will remain open as a natural amenity consistent with Garden City code requirements. The applicant is committed to providing a 10-foot pathway and low maintenance landscaping along this canal, or documenting a phased approach with interim gravel and easement details, which supports Garden City's long-range connectivity goals. The Drainage District number 2 canal is proposed to be tiled due to a significant infrastructure conflict with an existing sewer main located directly beneath the ditch. This request meets code exceptions because maintaining the ditch in its current form is infeasible. This is supported by the by the engineering justification that demonstrates a direct conflict with the existing public sewer main and easement and meets the exception criteria under Garden City Code 8-4A-9 .B.2, which allows enclosure when maintaining the ditch in its current form renders the property's use infeasible. The drainage district supports the proposal, confirming that hydraulic function will be preserved and groundwater management improved. Questions were raised by the public regarding the absence of a hydraulic study for the proposed canal tiling. The proposed 18-inch pipe will connect to and match the size of the existing 18-inch pipe flowing to the west along the southern frontage of Marigold Street. As described in the November 12, 2025 letter from the applicant's engineer, David Evans and Associates, the proposed system will maintain all existing flow capacities and ensure conveyance of water consistent with 8-4A-9B4. Further, the drainage district supports the proposal, and prior to commencing any tiling work, the applicant will be required to comply with all applicable standards and requirements of the drainage district. This will ensure that the identified concerns are adequately addressed and that the tiling fully conforms to drainage district standards. The application is conditioned to meet regulatory wetland standards as well. The site is outside the special flood hazard area. Conditions encourage building to the best available flood data for safety and insurance considerations. There are no historic structures on the site, and the proposed development does not impact any identified historic resources. Enhanced perimeter landscaping and tree planting improve the visual quality of the site and its interface with natural features, and conditions require Class 2 or 3 trees along Marigold Street to provide shade and ecological benefits consistent with Garden City's design objectives.
Councilmember Rasmussen. For the record, Dave Evans and Associates has no relation to me.
Thank you, Mayor.
I have a brother named Dave, but it's not this one.
I don't have much to say regarding finding 8. I think it's pretty straightforward that code is being met, and the goals of those codes with respect to this project are definitely meeting what's necessary here, and so I would vote to adopt 8, finding 8 in the draft language.
Thank you. Regarding explanation of findings, there are specific things about this reasoning statement that I appreciate and get me to the point where I am comfortable with adoption. And that is referencing and leveraging the drainage district, which is known to be a local district, and that they confirm that hydraulic function will be preserved and groundwater management improved. I think that's very significant. The second item is the condition that the applicant will be required to comply with all applicable standards and requirements of the drainage district. Therefore, I would move to approve as stated.
Thank you, Councilman Jorgensen. I don't have anything significantly additive and agree with my colleagues that it is proper to adopt the findings of finding number 8, the draft language of finding number 8 rather. And Mr. Mayor, I would submit to you the council's findings under the conclusions of law.
Thank you. Mr. Wadhams, would you advise on procedurally what's next?
Mayor, council members, as I understand it, on a vote to two to 1, the vote is to remand this because there has been a finding that finding number 4, the proposed design is not compatible with the neighborhood in scale and in intensity. So then the question is, what does that remand look like? Is the suggestion, just so we get this right, so staff gets this right, that it's remanded to staff for a revised design that at that point in time will be reviewed by staff and reviewed by the design consultants? And is it anticipated that it will come back up to the city council for a public hearing on a new design? Is that what the instruction is on the remand, or any particular instructions for staff on the remand and for the public would be helpful,
Heavy lift.
and for the applicant too.
Yeah, as specific as you can be helpful. So the items I heard most prominently, or the item, was the height. So would it be accurate to say that you're remanding and want to see a resubmittal that is no more than 3 stories high? I think that's easily stated, Mr. Wadhams. I think that's in the findings. We had very little discussion about density, and I would advise the council that although it may be perceived, if you've got 4 stories and you go to 3 stories, you're going to have fewer units. That would presume that the current footprint would remain the same and they just take a story off. I think it's highly unlikely that that's going to be the occurrence. So the issue on compatibility, density is a component of that. So is the council, I think we need to be clear on if the height is pretty much the reason you want to see it redesigned. Does density have a role to play in that? Is there an expectation from the council that there would be less than 200 and what is it?
36.
236 units on the site? So I think that's something that we need to, the council needs to convey to Ms. Thornborough on the remand, what your expectation is. Another thing, I think it would be fair to the applicant is the council understanding you can't pre-design something, but the code allows for certainly a different setback and landscape and amenities package than is represented in the current application. The discussion around the height may, I would say probably likely, impact the setbacks and the landscape. So there's going to be an opportunity. I have no doubt that the applicant would bring something back if they choose to do that that's consistent with the code. And the decision tonight's been based on understanding that the base code requirements have been met, but that it isn't compatible because of the height. So I just want the council to be able to convey to the degree you can an expectation of what you want to see when it comes back. And I think the public should understand that it may not have a 150-foot setback. It may be 15-foot setback that complies with the code. And there may not be 60 extra trees. There may be whatever's required. And typically on some of these units, there may not be trees required at all in the backyard. They may be in other common areas around the site. So I think we need some more detail to advise Ms. Thornborough on where this discussion should go with the applicant on a remand. So I'll be happy to maybe help with this portion of your deliberation. Is there a next, is it compatible, is the question, to have 236 units on 16 acres?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have some general comments and I don't want to throw a wrench into your question.
I think you are. Go ahead.
My apologies for the wrench. But clearly, in tonight's deliberations, I'm kind of standing alone, and I feel like I want to address why my thinking is what it is, and it's kind of foundational to why I end up where I end up on these kinds of things. So one of the most important things I think about in my role that allows me to sit up here as part of our great city's administration is to foster economic development for the whole city. I think a lot about it because it supports many of the things that we all love about Garden City, such as our amazing library, our fantastic police force that is deeply involved in the community, and they work hard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to keep us all safe. Continued economic development ensures our city's high standards of living can be maintained for all 13,000 of us now and the new residents in the future, no matter where they are in the city. Even if you don't care about new retail, restaurants, walkability, et cetera, that comes from development and additional density, one thing I assume we all do care about is less pressure for increased taxes. Accordingly, density and new residents broaden the tax base, which means the tax impact on all of us can be minimized over the long term. On top of that, new housing and variety of housing are crucial components of economic development, which can drive property values, security, and many other positive aspects of living in a prosperous area like Garden City. Lastly, some people say government should run more like a business. Well, there have always been at least a few similarities between government and private business, things like wage pressure and other general operational cost increases. In the public realm, these things can often outpace tax revenue projections. New development helps support funding of crucial services in these instances. No one wants to see a decline of crucial services because of budget shortfalls, but that is a possibility with slow or no growth. So I'm taking the opportunity here, and you all have sat through this meeting and the other ones before. I appreciate your patience as I share my comments here to say that growth can mitigate that risk of service decline due to new tax revenue from new development. But just as I say that, however, this has gotten even more challenging in the past few years due to some state legislation, but that's an entirely different soliloquy, and it's not appropriate for today's meeting. In summary, I believe new housing is very important to the continued health of our great city. And conversely, stagnant growth or no growth is detrimental. Also, from an economic development standpoint and fostering a broader tax base, new housing is crucial. That said, it is also very important, which is why we are all here, that new housing applications adhere to our city's code and is guided by our comprehensive plan. When they do, I'm supportive of their purpose and the good that new housing brings to our city. The last little comment I wanted to make, because it's definitely a direction we seem to be going tonight, is the idea of remanding. I am not supportive of remanding for consistency's sake. So What I mean by that, if anybody in this room has followed the rules and followed our code to do something on their own property, maybe it's add on to your garage or add a second story to your home or add an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. And if you've met all the requirements in our code, I would be there to support your efforts to do what you want to do on your property. I think that's important. I think, I don't think that remanding will delay an application that pretty much meets code. Again, I'm speaking for myself. And I think that the applicant has offered a project that meets all those things that we need to consider. So for consistency's sake, I am not supportive of a remand. So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor.
You're quite welcome. I think the onus on helping with this density question would fall on our council president, Councilmember Jorgensen. Again, we discussed the height issue. I think that's very clear. Is there an expectation that there would be a different density with the reduced height?
Mr. Mayor, I'll weigh in on this. I spoke boldly about the effects of compromise. Here we have an application that crossed every T and dotted every I. It followed code for R3. That's undisputed. The rub here is the impact, adverse impact perceived by people who already live there, including the scaling and intensity dilemma. I support that. I would point to the RM code designation as it's hard to say we need a new code for this part of Garden City and then turn around and support this application, even though it fits R3 and it comes in under the R3 deadline. This applicant is a talented and successful developer. That seems to be undisputed. As to density, it's my preference to not intervene and let the developer do what they can with this compromise to come in at 3 stories or below. I think they will be reasonable about that. They've given us every indication that they want to infuse cash to the Boise Bible College and create something that is beautiful and fits. They've over-landscaped it, provided for large buffers, and with compromise, some of that will likely go away. I don't personally wish to be so prescriptive that we name a density number.
Okay, Councilmember Jorgensen.
Mr. Mayor, President of the Council, fellow council member Rasmussen, I appreciate all your comments and I listen very attentively to all. In this instance, I am also unwilling to be dictative regarding the density. I think remanding and asking for modification to accommodate certainly a lot of public testimony, but practical concerns regarding the predominantly the traffic is what I heard, but also I think this helps remedy the light, the concern about folks looking down into their properties, etc. So that is the extent that I'm willing to specify the details. I also have a great deal of confidence and hope that in the remand, this developer will work closely and will continue to demonstrate the very thoughtful consideration regarding specific accommodations to the surrounding neighborhoods and the city.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm taking that the primary, perhaps only item to address on a remand is lowering the height to 3 stories. Is that accurate? Okay,
Mayor, can I,
yes.
thank you. So parking on the remand, not the parking, the traffic's not going to be an issue on remand, is that correct?
Mr. Williams, if I may speak to that, I align with Councilmember Rasmussen's perceptions of traffic. Traffic is terrible, period. The problem with traffic at that particular part of the city is not the people who live there. And adding, while this definitely is additive to the cars that we will see, the denying this project based on any kind of a traffic concern is equivalent in my mind to putting a Band-Aid on an open artery. This is not the problem that's causing traffic. And I agree with Councilmember Rasmussen's statement that this applicant should not be blamed for a problem that pre-exists and is going to get worse.
Okay.
Could we, Mr. Mayor, point of order, could we get a vote on that and whether?
We can. I'm just, give me just a second to check some notes here really quickly. Council, I'm just trying to drill this down so that we answer as many questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Jenna, is there another question I should be asking that you can think of off the top of your head other than the height? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just real quickly, Councilmember Jorgensen, you were quick to ask for a cross-park agreement, and I supported that in deference to you. Do you have thoughts on that for a remand?
No, the request there was it's conditioned, so it would be a condition of approval, correct?
Okay.
And I stood alone on the remand for the ACHD.
Yes. Yes. I want to be specific about the parking too, since it's come up. The application shows 3 more spaces on the current application. Now it's going to be remanded, so we don't know exactly if the density will change or not. So are you asking them to provide more spaces? If all the spaces are contained on the property that on the 16 acres that they're placing this development, do you want a parking access agreement in addition to that? So they have more than enough parking?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that was the question, the request. The applicant in public testimony stated that they would be amenable to that based on public testimony that was concerned about parking. Okay.
I just want to make sure that you're not asking him to provide more than the code requires for parking. And if that requires a cross-access agreement, then they need to do that. If it doesn't require that, because in their redesign, they park everything on their own property. I don't want to give the applicant the message that meeting the parking standard isn't good enough. You have to do more than that.
Mr. Mayor, in no way am I suggesting that.
Okay, perfect. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe no one else in the room was confused about that, but I wanted to make sure that we don't send a message that the remand includes exceeding the code in some other area. Okay, so we're talking about reducing the structures from 4 stories to 3 and complying with the code, the current code in the other areas. So that's going to include, for everybody's information, they need to continue to comply with the parking regulation, the landscape, the setbacks that are in code. And those may change significantly with the next application. Okay. I wanted that on the record. Okay. With that, council, I think the next action would be to have a formal, you've taken an action on each finding individually. We need to wrap it up by a motion to remand this in accordance with the record you created in your 8 findings to the Planning and Zoning Department for further consideration.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
planning and zoning or design review?
I'm sorry. Planning Department, Ms. Thornburg.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
clarification.
this goes through our planning director on a design review.
And Mr. Mayor, just a point of order, like I said, on December 30th, I'd be recommending that the decision document be continued for 2 weeks until January 26th. So staff can try to put all this, encapsulate all this in the reason statement, and you can take a look at it on the 26th to make sure it's what you guys want it to be.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Wadums, another quick question. Obviously, if the motion is to remand, my vote will be different, very likely. I haven't had the opportunity to be up here and do a remand or a deny. So is there anything I need to do other than just express my vote when the motion is made? And what I'm specifically pointing to, is there any way that I should point to my positivity towards this application when the motion's stated?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Rasmussen, upon making the motion in a second, we will have an opportunity for discussion.
Oh, that's fair.
And that includes those who vote in dissent.
I got you. Thank you.
Okay. Somebody needs to make a stab at the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move for a remand of DSR FY 2025-0008 Boise Bible College multifamily development, consistent with the record council members have given today in deliberation. Moreover, that staff shall provide the reasoned statement at our date certain of January 26th, 2026.
I would second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion? Rasmussen.
All I would just say is that I would have seconded, or I would have voted for an approve, or to approve the application, which is really all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
As part of the discussion, Mr. Wadums, I actually have a question. Normally on an action by the council on a land use issue, due process affords a reconsideration request by an applicant.
Well, you read my mind, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not sure this is a final decision, so I don't know if a remand works on this, but perhaps it does. So and this isn't, I'm not trying to impact the decision of council at all. It's information I think we need to convey to the applicant, and whether you're in a position to do that tonight or not, I don't know.
Well, Mayor, members of council, what I was going to recommend is that you give me an opportunity to research this, and I'll have an answer on the 26th, because the question is whether what you're fixing to do is a final decision. If it's a final decision, then to exhaust administrative remedies, the applicant, for example, would submit a request for reconsideration. So, but if this is a remand, this might not be a final decision. So for the applicant and the applicant's attorney, and for everybody, I'd like to have my recommendation ready on the 26th on whether
Okay.
they will be entitled to a request for reconsideration on this decision, whether it's a final decision or whether it's not a final decision because it's a remand.
Okay.
I'll have an answer on the 26th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waddles. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I should amend my motion, and rather than restate all of that, I want to add this statement that the remand will keep the original application date.
Okay. Is that
I
all
would
right?
second.
Okay. Okay. Now, for the audience, the reason for that addition is it maintains the applicant's rights under the current code. If there should be a code change before it comes back, it wouldn't apply. It would stay under the current code. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk call roll.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
No.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the items on our agenda tonight. And entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting and thank you all for being here.
A motion? All in
I'd
favor?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We stand adjourned.